Thank you for tuning into the Health and Social Care Business Podcast. Here we highlight the people and businesses making a real difference in the sector. From everyday challenges to big industry shifts, we explore the issues providers face and how experts and organizations are stepping up with practical solutions. Our goal is simple: to bring you relatable insights, real stories, and actionable advice to help you navigate and thrive in the business of health and social care. If there's one thing we know about technology, it's that it never stands still. We're living in a time where innovation feels truly limitless. In health and social care, emerging technologies like virtual reality, VR, and augmented reality, AR, are beginning to reshape how care is delivered, experienced, and even imagined. That's why we've invited Mark, CEO and founder of VR Care, to the podcast to explore how technology is changing the care landscape and how providers can begin to adopt these innovations in meaningful and practical ways. Mark and his team are using virtual reality to improve the lives of individuals in various care settings with immersive solutions that support well-being, stimulate memory, and foster connection. So today, we ask, is innovation going too far in care? Can it even replace the human touch? Or are we just getting started? Mark, welcome to our podcast.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mark. So, Mark, let's start from the beginning. What inspired the creation of VR Care? What was the moment that actually sparked the idea?
Okay, well, in terms of what inspired VR Care, I'd have to go back to when I first finished university in 2005. Because when I graduated from university, I went to university in Wrexham, and I graduated with a degree in film and media and animation. And I started out working on Postman, the children's television show.
My goodness.
Yeah, that was a really great experience to work on the show because it gave me some really important experience working in a professional environment in Cosgrove Hall Films in Manchester, in quite a large studio with a lot of different production staff, people on the cameras, people in set and props, people working on the animation, people working on the editing. So it was a great insight for me to work there. And after a short spell working there, about 4 months, I was working there on a freelance basis. I then set up my first TV production company from 2006 up to about 2012 when we had the London Olympics. I was very busy as a filmmaker, working on projects for TV, like TV commercials and documentaries, branded content. And then as YouTube was starting to grow around about 2009 to 2013, YouTube was really starting to explode then. A lot of my work was being focused on the online space. And during that time, technology was just evolving and television was evolving as well, which turning more into a streaming video on demand setup really with TV. And in terms of viewing habits and behaviors, in terms of people watching content, we're starting to make that transition from watching content on demand. So following 2013 and making a shift with the way I was working as a filmmaker, focusing more on shorter form content as Instagram and Facebook were starting to emerge with that style of content. It was around about 2015, 2016 that the first 360-degree cameras were starting to come out. And this was early development in immersive filmmaking. So I started experimenting with 360-degree cameras then, not for the purpose of producing content for care homes or any other sector. It was just to experiment with those cameras and just to see what they're capable of. And then it wasn't until around about 2018 that the cameras were becoming more serious, more professional. They can now start filming in 8K resolution, as with the Insta360 Pro 2 camera. You've got 6 camera lenses all around, and you can film in very high quality and film everything that you can see. where you are in that location and in that scene. So when the cameras started becoming more professional and I was noticing the quality of the footage was getting better, when you look at 360-degree content on Vimeo and YouTube, and then I was seeing stories of virtual reality was getting some really good outcomes in America in care homes, then that's what inspired me to start looking at the care sector, when I was discovering that virtual reality with the right content can really help people who are living with dementia and they're having information processing difficulties with their memory, and perhaps, with the right content and VR delivered in the right way, that it could really help somebody who's struggling to remember, really important and evoke important memories and fun memories. So then I started on a journey then to start creating content, and I started to develop a strategy of the type of content that I think would work in a care home. So we're looking at getting people closer to nature, getting people close to animals, places of interest, which will bring back memories like scenes in a beach or a forest or on a boat ride down a river or a boat ride on a lake, and also city tours as well. And while I was doing this research, one of the other things that inspired me was that my grandfather had vascular dementia. So when I was a child, he was living with vascular dementia and he was in a wheelchair, he was disabled, and this was following having a stroke. And once he'd had a stroke, he'd really started to deteriorate, and the vascular dementia progressed really quick, and his communication was getting more challenging as time was going on, to the point where we really couldn't communicate with him or have a conversation with him. We just knew that he was in pain and his facial expression. Yeah. So dementia's been in my family, and that's also another reason which inspired me to launch VR Care, because I just wanted to see if it can help people who are in care homes, who are in pain, who are becoming distressed because they're confused with living with dementia and how that progresses in their lives. So I just went into it with an open mind, not knowing whether it would work, but having an idea that I think it will work because it's working in America and they're getting some good results there. So we started off with some pilot in some care homes in the Northwest, some care home group, and it was very much a process of trial and error, really. Let's see what works. What's the ideal way to introduce virtual reality to a resident in the care home? How would you describe to somebody what is VR and what is the content inside the headset? So we just went through a process of learning, really, and it was a collaboration between VR Care and quite a lot of care homes in the Northwest, nursing homes as well, care homes who just specialize in dementia care. So that's where the inspiration come from for VR Care.
I did a little bit of research around what you're offering about you, but I didn't realize, because on the information out there on your website, there isn't that much. So just hearing firsthand your history and how far back this goes, it's inspiring, actually. And thank you for sharing that. So when you introduced the VR to the environment, into the care environment, how did people react? I know you mentioned that people have been quite collaborative, and you mentioned trial and error. And you also mentioned introducing the concept of VR and AR to residents. I could just only imagine, because I'm just getting used to the idea. So how did people actually react? Because lots of providers out there thinking, okay, this is something I want to introduce into our process, but they don't quite understand it.
Yeah, in terms of how it was received, it was very mixed, really. There was, care home managers and activity coordinators who were very open and excited about the idea of giving it a try, seeing if it could work. And then, on the other side of the coin, there was a lot of care home managers and nurses and activity coordinators who really didn't want to touch it because they just thought it was too risky. And the reason for that is because the ones who thought it would be too risky was because they've had an experience in virtual reality when VR first came out with the first Oculus headset.
Okay.
There wasn't a lot of content then, certainly not like high quality 360-degree video content. What people were looking at, and this was my first experience of putting on a VR headset, and that was in 2017. At Wrexham University, I was doing some filming there, and I was watching a roller coaster simulation.
Oh, okay.
And then the people who were delivering the demo, they just did it all wrong, really, because I was standing up watching the roller coaster. I was getting dizzy because you've got foreground movement.
Yeah.
So if you're standing up and you look down and virtually in your mind, you've got some fast movement in the foreground. That's what
Yes.
starts making you feel dizzy and you would get motion sickness. So the first question I was getting from everybody in the early stages of VR care is, it sounds like this is going to make our residents feel ill and it's going to create some motion sickness. That's where I would say, well, we haven't tried it yet. So the content that I've made has been done in a way where hopefully it shouldn't make you feel motion sick because the camera's static. So you're just in the middle of the scene. So, for example, the camera will be in front of a really beautiful waterfall.
I've seen that. I saw that on your website.
Yeah, and the only thing moving there is the water. The foreground's not moving, or the camera will be on a bridge looking over a river, and the only movement is the people and the cars and the movement of the water. You get that motion sickness when you are moving at the same time. So, I would say about 95% of the content I produced, the camera is absolutely static. And then there's about 5% of the content where the camera is moving.
Okay.
And not everybody would take too well to the movement. So
Yeah.
so the slowest movement will be like the hot air balloon, which is just floating up slowly. And you are moving and the ground is moving and things around you are moving. So there's a lot for you to process on a cognitive level. But then I'd say the fastest movement we've got is husky sledging in the North Pole in Lapland.
For Christmas.
Yeah, so we took the kids on holiday to Lapland, and if I'm going to any interesting locations, then one of the 360 cameras is always going with me. And I just had the camera rigged up above me on a pole, and it's one of the smaller Insta360 cameras, and the dogs are going quite fast through the forest. Now, some people will watch that, elderly people in care homes will watch that, and they'll be totally fine, and they'll look around to the left and they'll see the movement, and they may make a comment like, oh gosh, it's going really fast, isn't it? And they'll be fine with them. Other residents will be like, oh, I don't think I can watch this. So it's making a judgment, but also just having a conversation with the residents beforehand. If they've got capacity to speak and communicate, if they've not got late stage dementia and they've got capacity to have a conversation with you, it's just a conversation saying, would you like to do some husky sledging through Lapland in the North Pole? And it's a yes or no. And you're always there, really, if someone is having a bad reaction to the movement.
Okay.
You to guide them out of the headset, not in a panic, but just slowly, and then choose. But what we do, though, is we always start with some content which is very slow and peaceful, with a nice soundscape, relaxing music that helps to get residents settled into the technology when they're using it for the first time.
Before I go to ask about the surge in tech right now, I love your honesty talking about, you always put disclaimers out there. This is not something that has been tried before. I haven't personally seen lots of AR, VR tech in the care tech space. How about regulations? How do you navigate that? Is that a problem? Because I could only imagine that and all of that. Like, how do you navigate around that?
So going back to when we started the pilots with VR care in some care homes, I had a situation in one care home in the northwest of the UK where a resident was wearing the VR headset and they were having a good experience and they were reacting very positively and saying things like, oh, wow, and oh, it's beautiful. And they were saying things like that. But then the nurse come into the room and just kind of patted me on the shoulder and said, I need to have a chat with you. That particular resident's got Lewy body dementia. And I was like, oh, okay. So that I wasn't told about that. Sorry. So I learned then that conversations need to be had before virtual reality is even introduced to residents, in terms of identifying which residents, are not suitable really, or, it's not advised. So with Lewy body dementia, because Lewy body can cause hallucinations.
I see.
Yeah. So it's one of the forms of dementia where if you're living with LBD, Lewy body dementia, then you could be seeing things and having conversations with somebody in the room who is not there, and basically having hallucinations. That's the risk, is that the actual calming effects that virtual reality can provide in terms of helping for somebody who may helping to, someone who does become distressed, helping them to reduce that and helping them to be more relaxed, it could actually go the opposite way and have a negative effect. So although the resident at the time was having a a good experience, it may be that the next time that that particular resident was using a headset, that they would have a bad experience. So it was identified then in the pilot that should not be used with residents living with Lewy body dementia and epilepsy as well. And then what we were discovering as well is the reactions, whether you've got early stage dementia or you've got late stage dementia. And we're finding that we're getting really positive outcomes with both of them. Now, in terms of regulation, again, what we discovered through doing the pilots was regulation will come by way of making sure that the people who are delivering the virtual reality, and in the case of care homes, it's activity coordinators, that they've had proper training. So the one thing that we've done with VR Care, following the pilots and getting feedback from care homes, from the care home managers, from the owners of the care home group, from activity coordinators, is that there needs to be some proper training in place. So whenever any member of staff in a care home is going to do a virtual reality activity session, they know the risks and they know health and safety implications as well. So what we've got now is a 25-minute induction video, training video, and a 21 question quiz, where once you've watched the video and you've finished the quiz, then as an activity coordinator, you would get a certificate which will say you've gone through the health and safety of how to use the headset, how to introduce it to residents, how to do it safely, and in a way that the residents are going to enjoy it as well. And then that basically ticks the box, a health and safety point of view of delivering it in an environment when you've got elderly people.
Where have you had the most positive outcome?
I think for me, the best outcomes that we've had are people living with dementia. When we see a situation where we've got a resident who could be quite quiet a lot of the time, withdrawn and not really socially interacting with the other residents and staff, but then at first are a little bit anxious about putting on this technology over their eyes, and then they do, and then you see them open up and start telling stories. And then you see the reactions of the activity coordinator or the care staff who might be walking through the room where the session's taking place, and they would stop and put their hand over their mouth and be like, oh my gosh, is that Bob? Because they're so surprised that Bob is now telling all of these stories that he's never told before. Or Joan's usually quite quiet. And then there's Joan telling stories of when she was 16 years old and she used to go sailing, on the river, and she's watching a piece of content and it reminds her of that. So it's the cognitive stimulation which brings back the memories, which is the most positive outcome for me. But I mean, after that, another outcome that we discovered, which I never thought could ever be an outcome because I wasn't familiar with the term in PRM medication. We had one care home manager when we were doing the pilot who wanted to see if she could use the VR headset as a distraction technique, as a tool to distract residents when they're becoming really distressed, when they're becoming confused, they're pacing up and down the lounge or the hallway, and they're asking questions like, where's my taxi? I want to go home now, and lost really. And in moments like that, it's moments then when the nurse or the staff would administer some medication, which they say is PRM medication. And I was like, what's that? And they said, it's medication as and when we feel it's necessary, that we feel that the resident needs some medication to help, to help them calm and relax. So they started using the VR headset instead over a period of 3 months.
Instead of the PRN?
Yes. And what they found is that after 3 months, they seen a reduction in the PRN medication. And
amazing.
Yeah, and then since then, I've had other care home managers try it out as well, and it's worked for them. I don't have the statistics or the percentages of exactly how much they've reduced the use of PRM medication, and that is on my to-do list, is to start phoning up care homes and saying, have you been using the VR to try and reduce the use of PRM medication? And I need to start asking those questions really and start doing some surveys and to start gathering some data so we can perhaps say in the future that VR could be like evidence-based. And, we've had some positive outcomes in hospices as well. So we've had VR.
Hospices?
Yeah, yeah. So patients going in there for end of
End
life.
of life, yes, of course.
Yeah, and and they could be in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
So we've had nurses use the VR headsets to distract from the pain for pain management and obviously distract from the stressful situation that the patients are in, unfortunately. And we've seen some good outcomes in hospices as well. But of course, it's not just, red people who are living with dementia or people who are in hospices, just like residential care homes and retirement villages where the residents who live in there, don't have dementia. We just see great outcomes. And that's what we've had recently when we went into an Inspired Villages location in Tatton Hall, where the residents there are, we just had some amazing outcomes. And some of them residents at first didn't want to put on the headset. They were a bit like,
Yeah.
not too sure. Once they put the headset on, I struggled to get the headset off them. They were happy to watch back-to-back tours and experience in the headset. And following the session, they were asking when I was going to go back to do another session. So
That's amazing. Hearing you speak, I know you usually do the residential care, but I'm just imagining how this could change so much, especially for home care services, daycare centers, perhaps even looking at similar ailments to dementia. This is fascinating. And I'm so sorry. I have to apologize again because I didn't actually expect so much outcome that has been had from VR because I thought the conversation would be a bit more, oh, this is a new technology and this is the solutions we're solving and this is an ETC. This is new. And for the limited time it's been on the market, it's had so much positive outcomes for real lives. Dementia is an area in health and social care that I feel personally needs a lot of innovation. So the fact that you're there, and in my opinion, it's not like you're a massive company. You're just this person who has a lot of interest in filming and who has developed this product and is creating these solutions. This brings me to my next question, which is technology going too far? Because with the introduction of robots, carers, and all of this, lots of people are very tech averse. They feel like technology is probably going to replace the human touch, but from what I'm hearing from you, it seems like it's needed. And if only people could actually just give it a chance, it has more positives than negatives. So, in your opinion, the growing concern about technology actually replacing the human touch, what is your opinion on that? Of course, I know it's going to be positive. You've spoken about the positive externalities of VR that you didn't even anticipate. But what is your opinion on that?
my opinion is it's still too early for people to be too concerned just yet, because what I'm seeing with technology in the care sector, whether it's a product like a virtual reality headset, or it's an interactive touch screen, or it's a robot dog or a robot cat, or whether it's artificial intelligence, which is being used in residents' bedrooms with cameras and sensors to detect if a resident's fallen over during the night.
Yeah.
It's absolutely time sensitive, time critical that the staff need to be alerted that Bob or Joan has fallen out of their bed, or they've tried to get out of bed and to go to the toilet and they've fallen over and hurt themselves. And without having technology or artificial intelligence, then you would just be relying on staff going into the room and checking up on Bob or Joan. And they're not going to do that too often because they could potentially wake up the residents and disturb them. Now I've got a client who I've recently done a video for called Sensio, and they provide sensors, cameras, infrared technology with AI, which will sense if a resident has fallen over. And then on the app and the software, the staff will be alerted straight away because it's detected that it's happened, really. So I can only see that technology and AI right now, it's only doing anything but making improvements, really. It's helping carers spend more time on delivering care and enriching activities, and not spending as much time on paperwork. When you look at like the digitization that's happening in the care sector,
Yes.
and we've got digitized care planning now. Like one of my clients is person-centered software. I do
Yeah.
a lot I do a lot of work with them, and I provided content for their wellness platform. I've provided them with video content,
Yeah.
not 360 content, just standard video talk.
Yeah,
And they save so much time for the
absolutely.
carers, because the carers are not doing everything like the old way of doing things years ago, where everything was paper
Have a
based.
notes and then you have to write it
Yeah,
down. And you
exactly.
have to make sure your writing is legible. I used to work on the front line, so I know. So you have to ensure that what's being said, it's legible. So there are so many things that you had to do. So that extra 15 minutes can now be used to actually interact with the clients or the service user or the individual.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I just think it's just all 100% positive for me. And sometimes you may see a story on LinkedIn of a new piece of software or a new
Yeah.
AI product which has come out, and it's for the care sector. And you could perhaps look at it and think that's just doing AI, or that's just doing technology for the sake of it because you
Yeah.
can. And
Yeah.
you've got the capabilities to come up with a new piece of software or a new piece of AI. But when you actually look into what the capabilities are of that new piece of software or AI technology, then you realize that it's going to save care staff and care managers and nurse and activity coordinators time. And the more time that they can save, it means the more time they can spend delivering personal care, person-centered care, and meeting the personal preferences of our residents in all of our care homes and nursing homes and dementia care facilities and carer home as well. If technology can be used in that way to save time, then it can only be a good thing, in my opinion.
So what's the most surprising thing about immersive technology? I know that you were introduced to that word due to the outcomes, but apart from that, what is something you didn't expect would happen as a result of this?
I can give you one amazing example which happened when I was doing the pilot, and it also happened recently. So when I turn up at a location to deliver virtual reality, I always introduce myself to everybody in the room and give people a bit of background on me, because I'm just a stranger when I first walk in. So I make an introduction and I say hello to everybody, and we all do our introductions. And then sometimes you may have an activity coordinator or the care home manager or another member of staff say, oh, the resident over there. I'm just going to use Bob and Joe just as an example. Bob, who's sitting over there in the corner, he's got macular degeneration and glaucoma. You probably don't want to use it with Bob because he can't watch the TV because of his vision impairment. You can only really see things really close up to him.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I'd never leave anybody out. So we've got to try it and see. So since 2021, the first outcome I had with this was in 2021, where we had this resident with really challenging, vision impairment, and he needs assistance to walk around the care home. He needs somebody by his side, and yet he can't watch the TV. He put on the VR headset, and straight away he was like, oh, I used to work in the college over there. And he was watching a tour of the River Mersey. So I was on the ferry across the Mersey filming, and I was actually quite distant from the Liverpool skyline. So where you can see the Liver building and a Cunard building and a Port of Liverpool building and a Royal Albert Dock, really famous landmarks there.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were quite distant, and actually the footage at that time wasn't as good as what I'm filming now in 2025 with a better camera and better software and all of that. And it was heavily compressed footage. I compressed it right down to 3K resolution, whereas
What does that mean?
so just the size of the resolution smaller.
Okay. So the vision was quite blurred.
With my eyesight, I've got like what you'd say is perfect eyesight. I don't need anything up close to me or seeing things in a distance. I'm fine. But I put on the VR headset, and I can see the Liver build and I can see all of the landmarks, but it's not in the clarity that I would like it in. Now, this gentleman puts on a headset and now he can see all of these buildings and he's telling stories, and the staff are just like scratching their heads thinking, how can he see how can he see that? Because he can't see the TV screen. And then we worked it out, and it's like, okay, well, it actually makes sense, because what a virtual reality headset is really just, you've got a mobile phone inside the headset. It's just a small mobile phone screen, and you've got two magnifying glasses right in front of your eyes, which is magnifying the content inside the headset right into your eyes, and the light is coming right into your eyes as well. So for somebody who has got that vision impairment with macular degeneration or glaucoma, and they can have like a tunnel vision effect, and it can be really blurred around the outside, and it can be really dark as well, all of a sudden they've got light shining in their eyes and there's no depth to the imagery. So if they're in a room looking at the wall, which could be 3 meters away, and there's a TV screen there, their eyes, as their vision is getting expanded further out, it's becoming more and more blurred. But inside the VR headset, their eyes are seeing a flat image.
Yeah.
Even though it is 360 degrees and you can have 360-degree content, their eyes still perceive it as it being flat. And that's why we've had probably about 10 people over the last 5 years who have got really challenging, vision impairments, and they've been able to watch the content. And then the staff in the care home are just blown away by it. They're stood there scratching their head, and they're walking out the room and bringing other staff in and bringing the other carers in saying, Bob can see the content inside the headset, because they're just really surprised. I don't get surprised by it now because I've already seen it happen once. So I like seeing the reactions of the staff when they see it for the first time.
So how a care home provider adopt this? Can this actually be adopted for settings that aren't like residential or care homes, or like in a school for like a dom care or supported living? Could it actually be adopted? And if so, how can it be adopted?
So it was literally only recently, 2 weeks ago, that I'd introduced virtual reality into the domiciliary care setting. So now we've got some VR headsets locally where the carers who go and visit residents who are housebound, they've now just had the training, and they've been provided with VR headsets to go into people's homes and sit down. And if they're going to spend 30, 45 or 60 minutes with that person, and they're going to make a cup of tea and have a chat and help them with whatever they're going to help them with, then they can bring out the VR headset and just watch one piece of content, which will be 5 minutes long, and then have a conversation afterwards. So it's only recently that I've introduced it into the carer home setting. And also it was only recently that I've introduced it into a SEND school. So it was a school in St. Helens, Mill Green School. And it's the first time that I've gone into a SEND school. So children living with autism and complex learning difficulties, Down syndrome, and various other, physical disabilities. And I'd say in the 6 years that I've been delivering VR sessions, starting from the pilots back in 2019 through to today, the best outcomes that I've had in any setting was the SEND school. Now, I know I mentioned earlier that dementia in the care setting, that's where I've seen the best outcomes. But the best outcome that I've seen was in the SEND school, because every child was fully engaged, was fully cognitively stimulated. They were asking questions. When they were taking an interest in geology. So in the case recently, I went on a road show, a bit of a tour around lots of different settings: care homes, retirement villages, carer home, SEND school, primary school, and also into like the local sports club community centre, into a church as well, a village hall in a church where all the local residents were invited to come down for the day. And
Mark, you're working really hard.
Yeah, it got really busy now. It's just like the last 6 months, like my virtual reality schedule has almost doubled really in terms of the amount of projects I'm now starting to work on, specialist project, and just VR care is just growing slowly and organically. But in the SEND school, if you got children who may not take an interest in a topic like geology, then you're getting the children up close to geology, like 250 million year old red sandstone rocks and Cheshire on a sandstone ridge. It's something that in most cases they wouldn't be that bothered about or take an interest in, but they're looking at the content.
Seeing it differently. It's like it's been explained to them in a completely different way.
Absolutely. I was absolutely made up when I left at the end of the day, and I had a chat with the head teacher, Sean, and he was like, yeah, everyone's had a really good time today. And, and that's going to be the start of me introducing the virtual reality into the education sector as well, over the next couple of months. So looking at your question there, I'll tell you what surprised me the most recently when we look at engaging with the tech, getting hands-on with it as well. I had the oldest person I've ever had inside the VR headset recently on this kind of VR roadshow that I've been on with the Cheshire Sandstone Ridge Trust, a lady called Olive who lives in Frodsham, and she's 98 years old. She put on a VR headset, and with very little assistance or explanation, she was able to work out how to choose different pieces of content inside the VR headset. So I had the pass-through mode on in mixed reality, and Olive could
What mode on?
pass-through mode.
Okay, what does that mean?
What that means is with the latest VR headsets, which are coming out now, like the Meta Quest 3S and the Meta Quest 3, they've got cameras on the outside. So what it means is you can see the room that you're in. So you're wearing a headset, you can see your environment, and you can see holograms in front of you, like the menu system, and the menu screens will be around you. Now, there's two ways that you can then control a headset. One way is hand tracking, where you can use your hands and your fingers, and what you will see in front of you is like a white laser beam coming out of your hands. And if you pinch your thumb and your trigger finger together, that is like clicking the mouse on a keyboard or pressing tap on an iPad. That's select. And Olive very quickly discovered she worked out she could go into the menu, choose another piece of content, and she's 98 years old. And we had another gentleman who's in that group who was 93, and it was just like, it's like he's been using the VR headset for a whole year. It was the first time he put on a VR headset that day. Set up the VR headset for him. I'd selected the piece of content, and then I said to the gentleman, right, I'm just going to help you get into the VR headset now. And I put over the strap over his head and I tightened it up. And then I made sure he was okay. And then I went on to the next person to set them up. And by the time I was setting up the next person, he'd already worked out how to go to the menu and choose something else. So he'd started watching a few minutes of one piece of content and he's like, oh, I'm on Helsby Hill now.
Is that because it's your content, how it's structured, or is it just the use of VR or their knowledge of understanding or picking up or adopting the technology quickly?
They just picked it up really quickly because there is an assumption. There's definitely like an ageist assumption with technology, with people. You're just going to think that someone who's 98 years old is never going to have a VR headset on their head, and they're not going to be able to use an iPad, and you couldn't be any more wrong. I've gone into care homes and seen people in their 90s or over 100 years old on iPads, on touch screens. And once you give like a quick introduction to it, because all I did at the beginning of the session with Oliver is I introduced myself, I explained what the VR headset is, I explained that when you wear in a headset, you will be able to see everyone in the room. You're going to see some holograms in front of you, and you will see these white laser beams coming out your finger and your thumb, and see how you get on with it. But just to let you know, you can do this with your finger and your thumb, and you can select the menu, go to the content library and choose something else. I just give a very quick verbal demonstration of that for 30 seconds. And I wasn't expecting people to actually pick it up so quick. And it was the same in the SEND school as well. Some of the kids who have got autism and learning challenges, they just picked it up so quick. I was really amazed, really, how quick they picked it up. So there's definitely not many barriers there.
Yeah, for something that has a really good outcome, it's good to know that it's something that could be adopted very quickly. So Mark, paint me a picture. So there's a dump care company somewhere listening to this, and they are thinking of a particular individual that this would benefit. So what is the first step? How would it work in practice? And how can they adopt this very quickly to their service?
What I would recommend to anybody who's going to introduce VR into the care setting is that you do things the right way in terms of ensuring you don't just go and grab a VR headset from Argos or Amazon or anywhere where you can buy a VR headset and just turn up with it, and you're trying to work out that VR headset for the first time and you don't really know the best way to introduce it to that person. It's like giving somebody a football, somebody who watches football, but they don't play football. They're not a footballer, but they like watching it. It's like giving that person who likes watching football and saying, here you go, as a football. Can you go and coach those kids over there on how to be a good footballer, and go and communicate with them and get them doing drills and running up and down and get them practicing and stuff? And they're going to be like, oh, okay, you don't know where to start.
What do I do?
You've got to think on the feet, haven't you? And then they're going to wing it. They're going to make it up.
And then if they have a bad experience, then they wouldn't do it again.
Yeah, absolutely that. So if you've got somebody who's just trying to just to see how it goes, I'll just get a VR headset and we'll go onto YouTube and find any old content which could have lots of movement in, and they may not have a good Wi-Fi connection, and this does happen, then that's potentially when you're going to get a bad experience, and the resident is like saying, oh, it's not working and it's moving quite a lot, I don't like it. And the person who's
And
delivering
sickness
it,
might kick in.
yeah, and it may be that, like, the person who's delivering that virtual reality session has the resident standing up, which is just no. The resident always needs to be sitting down for safety, because they're just, they do it innocently, thinking that that's the way to do it, because they've seen people on TV or
Yeah.
people online standing up doing gaming.
Hmm.
So there is a bit of a risk out there that you could have, like, activity coordinators who do gaming back at home with the VR headset, and they then take in their VR headset into the care home and think, we'll get
Do it the
Bob.
exact same way.
Yeah, and get Bob playing a game, and he's going to be standing up. And don't worry, Bob, I'll be standing next to you. And then he could get distracted. The activity coordinator could get distracted by another member of staff. And then you leave Bob just for 5 seconds. And then Bob starts walking and falls over. All of these things can potentially happen if it's done the wrong way. And the one thing we built up with VR Care is a system, a way that you do this, setting up the headset, giving you the right training, and giving you the system that you need in terms of writing a risk assessment, and health and safety risk analysis.
Very
So,
important.
yeah, so I mean, my advice for anybody who wants to introduce VR into their care organization is to not do it that way, and to look at engaging a company who's got a track record of doing it, so you know that you're going to do it safely, and the residents are going to get the best experience from it as well.
Brilliant. So for providers looking to adopt an innovative approach, I wouldn't go as far as saying evidence-based yet until Mark collates all his data, and then we can say it's evidence-based. But someone who is looking to be innovative and apply something, we have bits of evidence to see that it works, then certainly they could reach out to you. Just before I let you go, Mark, we're just going to do a very quick fire round. One myth about VR in care that you'd love to debunk is what?
The one myth that I would love to debunk is the question of, it's going to make our residents feel sick, isn't it? I believe that VR can really make you feel motion sick. And that's not the case, not with VR Care, because the content that we create is static, and the resident is sitting down. They are static in the 360-degree scene, and they can just look around and explore. There's no foreground movement unless they watch the hot air balloon experience. Then there'll be some small movement in that. But that's the biggest myth for me, is I always get asked that question, what about motion sickness?
Yeah, I feel personally that's one thing that I would be concerned about as well, because it's just going from one reality into another. For me, I don't like things that I don't have a lot of control over. So that reassurance is necessary for someone like myself. So the second question is, one memorable moment from your sessions this month that you could share with us.
I had a gentleman in a retirement village that we went into last week who was watching the hot air balloon experience. And I was having a conversation with him while he was watching the experience. And I'm always very calm and speak slowly and clearly when someone's immersed in the headset. I'm not like shouting right next to the ear. So he's doing it in a calm and relaxed manner. And I just said to this particular gentleman, why are you watching the hot air balloon experience? Is it bringing back any specific memories for you? And he was like, oh, yes, I used to be in the RAF, in the air squadron, in aviation. So he used to be a test pilot, flying the Spitfire and the Mosquito and the Lightning, all of these other different aircraft. And he just then opened up with lots of stories. So I caught a little bit of that story on camera. But once the VR headsets were packed away and the camera was packed away, I was talking to this gentleman for about 15 minutes because I've got an interest in aviation. And that will stick with me, just that conversation with him, because I've done a lot of work with the military as a media trainer. I've done media training with NATO and the MOD and all the armed forces around Europe, and been to places like Kenya and Oman. And pretty much most countries in Europe, I've been working with the forces. So I've got an interest in the military and the history from me working as a contractor. And so for me to just sit there and let him tell his story.
How did that make you feel? Like knowing
Great.
that you've actually created something that could just evoke that sort of emotion.
That's what I enjoy most about doing it. It's not the fact that I've had the opportunity to go out and create some really nice content and then I'm just seeing these really nice reactions when they're watching it and saying, oh God, look at the robin's flying in front of me, and oh, what a lovely view. And it's when people say, you know what, it brings back some memories, this of when we took the kids on holiday to Tenerife, or we'd go to Blackpool and spend the whole day there in the summer. And that's what I enjoy most, is having those conversations, because that's what I say to care providers. This is a tool to open up meaningful conversations and recite those important memories.
So for people who want to adopt this in their homes, is it possible? So someone might be listening and thinking, okay, my loved one isn't in a residential home, but they're at home. How can I adopt this?
Okay, a good way of adopting and experiencing immersive content, 360-degree videos, is just starting with your mobile phone or your iPad or your Android tablet. So if you explore YouTube and find some content which is not a virtual reality roller coaster, but let's say it is like a virtual reality tour of New York or London or Barcelona, a place that would bring back some, meaningful memories for the person that you're going to sit down with and look at that content, then what I'd say is you've already got mobile phones.
Yeah.
In most cases, a lot of care homes have already got iPads or Android tablet. So start with that. And then if residents are you're getting some good outcomes of residents, because you can pick up your phone or your iPad. And
Right.
if you've got the YouTube app downloaded on your phone or on your iPad or a tablet, you can just use it like a VR headset, not wearing it, but looking at a distance,
Mm-hmm.
moving it around. So that is like
Get a feel of it.
get a feel of it. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so thank you for that. So are you saying that VR care, you don't provide services to individuals? So if someone wanted to adopt, if they wanted you to come over to their homes, train them how to use it, is it something you can do?
It's something that we haven't done yet in terms of just an individual's home. We've just never had any inquiries about that, really. So it's never really crossed my mind to do it. But if someone wanted to do that, like engage VR care, it'll be a case of them just signing up to one of our packages, because the way we do things is we sell the headset with our content preloaded on it, and
Yeah.
then a link to the e-learning course where they'll watch the induction video, do the quiz, get the certificate, and then they are then ready to go and use the VR in the setting that they're going to use the setting in. But we've not had any inquiries from anyone saying, I would love to buy this for my mother or my father or my grandfather, and I would love to be able to just take it to their house because I'm a relative and spend time with them. I've never had an inquiry, so it's not something that I've had a lot of time to think about, because with VR care we've been so focused on care homes and nursing homes and hospices, and now we're engaging with schools as well. But it's something that can absolutely happen. It's just whether that individual is in a position and are happy to make the investment to sign up to the packages that we've got. And we've got 4 packages, and the starting price is £595 plus VAT. And that's setting up the headset with all of the accessories and protective case, and there's quite a bit that they get the content preloaded, headset sent in the post, and then onboarding onto the online course, and then they're up and away then. There are VR companies out there who do 2 things on a rental basis, but after 12 months, you could have brought 2 or 3 VR care packages by then, where
Yeah.
you just own a headset outright. So absolutely, people in homes can engage with a VR company like VR Care. It's just making the investment to go ahead and do it, really.
And that's going to be the same thing for a provider. So if there's a provider listening to this, they've listened to everything you've had to say about VR and they now want to go ahead, all they have to do is go onto your website.
It always starts with a Teams call. Every care provider wants to have a conversation first before they commit to anything. So we have a Teams call. We talk through the options available, and then they choose an option that fits with their budget and what's going to work for them, really. It might be a smaller care home, or it might be a care home with 120 residents. So they might want 2 or 3 headsets. But in most cases, on average, we provide 1 VR headset per care home if they've got around about 35 to 40 rooms, and any homes who have got 55, 60 plus rooms and more residents, then they take an interest in having 2 VR headsets then. But once they've made the investment, there's no more ongoing cost then. Let's say the owner headset, they've always got the ongoing support and always a phone call or an email away if someone gets stuck on something, or it's something that they may forgot about when they watch the induction video in terms of how to operate the headset. But we very rarely get any emails or phone calls of people saying, I'm a bit stuck, and you just give me some guidance over the phone, because we've made sure with the training video, it covers all of the bases.
Brilliant. Mark, thank you so much for your time. It's been absolutely insightful, to say the least, having you on here. I've learned so much about VR, and I'm really happy to hear the impact and the positive outcomes that it's having across multiple care settings. And I'm even more excited to see how far you take this. I know that you spoke about this being something new to the care setting and in terms of care tech, but I'm very optimistic with regards to how far you're going to take this. So on that note, thank you so much, Mark. And may I ask that when you have even better outcomes, and perhaps maybe when we can finally call your product evidence-based, we have you back on here to discuss your journey and other things that you've been able to do with VR.
I'd absolutely love to do that. And thank you for your time as well. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I'd love to come back on in another 6 months or 12 months when we're hopefully working towards that goal of trying to make things evidence-based with VR in the health and the care setting. So absolutely.
Thank you. That's it. If you enjoyed this episode, we would love to hear from you. Let us know what about this episode you liked and how we can improve. Join our growing community of providers and carers who are learning new processes and technology, discovering proven best practices, growing through insights from industry experts, all from people creating real practical solutions in care. This is the Health and Social Care Business Podcast.